Number 8. Ganna Zuzina. In 2006, British millionaire Barry Pring fell in love with a young Ukrainian stripper named Ganna Zuzina. To get her to leave her job, he supported her financially, and a year later the couple married. In 2008, the couple celebrated their one-year anniversary over dinner. Zuzina claimed she left her gloves in the restaurant and rushed back inside, leaving Pring staggering and seemingly intoxicated in the street, waiting for their taxi. Out of nowhere, a stolen car with fake license plates and no headlights mowed the businessman down and killed him. Within days of her husband's death, Zuzina flew back to Britain, where she attempted to move into Pring's home and claim his assets. And when Pring's body was returned to the UK, his liver and kidneys were missing, and he'd been embalmed, making it impossible for experts to test his blood for poison. Pring's family strongly suspected Zuzina had something to do with his death and spent copious amounts of money in order to get justice. A private investigator found that a restaurant employee had offered to call a taxi for the couple the night Pring was run over, but Zuzina had declined. During dinner, Pring had complained of a burning sensation in his chest, suggesting in hindsight that perhaps he was poisoned. But with the organs missing from his corpse and an inability to test his blood, there was no way to know for sure. A judge ruled that Pring had been unlawfully killed after he was tricked into standing in the street. But Zuzina won a bid to overturn the findings, and a new inquest was granted. Pring's family eventually dropped their case against her, and she received a six-figure payout from her late husband's $2 million estate. Number 7. Double Trouble. In 2014, when wealthy 84-year-old Manhattanite Paul Aronson found himself wanting the companionship of a younger woman, he turned to a website that matches sugar daddies with sugar babies. It was on this site he connected with 17-year-old Shayna Foster. She agreed to meet the retired lawyer for dinner and asked if she could bring along her twin sister, Shalane. Aronson readily agreed, but what he probably thought would be twice the fun turned out to be a double dose of terror. After enjoying an expensive meal, the twins joined the octogenarian at his luxury townhouse for drinks, and unbeknownst to Aronson, to rob the old man as well. Armed with zip ties, the sisters bound their victim to his coffee table, cleaned his wallet of nearly $500 in cash, and left him helpless on his living room floor while they went on a shopping spree with Aronson's credit cards. A neighbor rescued Aronson 20 hours later, and law enforcement caught up with Shayna and Shalane, who claimed that the old man had made them uncomfortable and asked them to do things they didn't want to do. Shayna, who took the heat for the crimes and admitted she was the mastermind, described Aronson as old, ugly, and disgusting, and even went as far as saying he deserved what happened. She received a prison sentence of 5 years, while Shalane was sentenced to 1 1/3 to 4 years for her lesser role in the disturbing attack. Number 6. SANDRINE DEVILLARD. Nicknamed the Hermit of the Alps, Marcel Amfo spent much of his life in a wooden cabin with no electricity or running water, near the French village of Paix-Saint-Pierre. His simple lifestyle allowed him to save a fortune. He bought a sizable portion of valuable land that only increased in value as the area's reputation as a winter wonderland grew among tourists. The eccentric millionaire built several chalets on his property, where he allowed his friends and family to live rent-free. One day in 2010, a glamorous real estate agent from Paris named Sandrine Devillard knocked on Amfo's door and offered to buy his land. He refused, but agreed to go out to dinner with Devillard. Amfo quickly fell in love with the younger woman, and they married a year later. Believing that Devillard was only with the man for material gain, many of Amfo's friends and loved ones vocally opposed the union. Their suspicion only grew after the wedding, as the couple continued to live apart from one another, with Devillard remaining in Paris and Amfo staying in his shack. Just a year after marrying the couple, and 2 of Devillard's friends were in a car crash that killed Amfo. Everyone else survived, giving rise to rumors that Devillard had something to do with her husband's death. And soon enough, she told the people living on his property that as Amfo's sole heir, she planned to evict them and develop the land. But Devillard's plans came to a screeching halt when she learned that shortly before his death, Amfo had reversed his will, leaving everything, including ownership of the houses he had built, to his family and friends. Devillard argued that the signature on the will looked forged, but the court was unconvinced and upheld the man's decision to leave her empty-handed. So what would you do if you knew a gold digger was taking advantage of your friend? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, then please be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5. Mackenzie LUECK. Not everyone who seeks a sugar daddy has their sights set on a luxurious life. Some, like 23-year-old Mackenzie LUECK, are college students who want to focus on their education without having to worry about money. By all appearances, Mackenzie was your typical university athlete from an average American family. Little did her loved ones know she was an experienced sugar baby who relied on wealthy older men for financial support. Mackenzie was so well versed at this lifestyle, she even offered advice and guidance to other aspiring sugar babies on social media. After visiting her family in June of 2019, the 23-year-old arrived at the Salt Lake City airport at around 2:00 a.m. and summoned a cab to a park where she had plans to meet a man. And then Mackenzie was never seen alive again. An extensive investigation led police to 31-year-old Iola Ajayi, an IT specialist the young woman had met through a sugar dating website shortly before her death. Her burned and bound remains and several of her belongings were found in his backyard. Ajayi was arrested for kidnapping, aggravated murder, and desecrating her corpse. At a loss to identify any particular motive, prosecutors argued that the suspect killed just to know what it felt like. Regardless of his reasons for murdering Mackenzie, Ajayi pled guilty to several charges and received a life sentence for his crimes. He even apologized to his victim's family, who remained adamantly unforgiving. Number 4. Roxana Bibi. In September 2016, 65-year-old pensioner Mohammed Youssef was murdered by a couple who wanted to benefit from his life insurance. As he lay sleeping in his Lancashire, England home, 45-year-old Mohammed Arif and his lover, 38-year-old Roxana Bibi, administered a dozen blows to the man's head and slit his throat. Youssef had married Bibi just months before his death, and during that short time, she drained his bank account to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, she was having a secret affair with Arif, and it was during that time that the clandestine couple took out a fraudulent several $100,000 life insurance policy on Youssef at Bibi's urging. Shortly thereafter, Youssef drew up a will leaving everything to his wife. Less than 2 days after returning from a trip to Pakistan, he was dead. At the time, Bibi was in Ireland, but surveillance footage found Arif's car driving past Youssef's home 3 times over the course of 6 hours on the night he was murdered. The victim's landlord discovered his body several days later, and police launched a murder investigation. DNA, cell phone evidence, traffic footage, and financial records quickly led them to Arif and Bibi, who apparently co-conspired to rob Youssef of his assets and then profit from his murder. The pair asserted their innocence but were found guilty of murder. Bibi received a 28-year prison sentence and Arif was sentenced to 32 years behind bars. A third person who provided a false alibi for Arif was handed a 15-month sentence. Following the verdicts, Deputy Chief Inspector Joanne McCoe described Youssef as a gentle and giving community member who fell prey to deadly greed and called his death a cold-blooded assassination of a wholly innocent man. Number 3. Des Campbell. Society tends to automatically think of gold diggers as women. But the next example on today's list shows that men are sometimes just as guilty of forging love while dipping their hands into their unexpecting partner's pocketbook. Des Campbell's intentions were nothing short of sinister when he married his wife Janet in secret in 2004. Unbeknownst to Janet, the New South Wales, Australia man had an established habit of living beyond his means and faced mounting debts. Just a week after the wedding, Janet bought an upscale home for the couple and changed her will, leaving almost half her estate to her new husband. Over the following months, Campbell had 3 affairs and grew increasingly interested in eliminating his wife from the equation while somehow still enjoying the money she had inherited from her first husband. Meanwhile, he denied that he and Janet were in a relationship, period, and described her as pig ugly behind her back. Campbell insisted on taking Janet camping in early 2005, despite her lack of experience with it. He set up their tent just a few feet away from a 164-foot cliff at Royal National Park south of Sydney. Not long after that, Campbell showed up at a police station claiming that Janet had disappeared during a trip to the bathroom, and that he had discovered her dead body at the base of the cliff. Just a week later, he requested access to her will and took one of his girlfriends on vacation. He was absent from his wife's funeral and proposed to his girlfriend just days later. Police accused Campbell of pushing Janet to her death and arrested him for murder. A jury found him guilty, but he maintained his innocence and filed an appeal. The case went to Australia's highest court, which upheld Campbell's conviction. Number 2. SHERRA WRIGHT. Lorenzen Wright was a professional basketball player with a promising future when he seemingly vanished into thin air during the summer of 2010. While visiting a friend in his hometown of Memphis in July of that year, the NBA star received a call from his ex-wife SHERRA WRIGHT, who demanded that Lorenzen return their son to her right away. Hours later, a 911 dispatcher received a call from a distressed male with gunshots in the background, but the police did not investigate. Lorenzen's mother, Marion, reported him missing. In the meantime, she grew suspicious of SHERRA, who casually claimed that her ex-husband was spending time with other women. At the same time, SHERRA told investigators that Lorenzen had criminal connections and that she last saw him with a man who was trying to sell drugs. She also claimed that men in trench coats had appeared at her doorstep looking for Lorenzen. His remains, riddled with gunshot wounds, were found on an isolated road in a wooded area. The homicide investigation soon went cold. And for the next 7 years, the circumstances surrounding Lorenzen's death remained a mystery. Suspicions about SHERRA's possible involvement grew as she squandered a $1 million life insurance payout that was meant for the couple's 6 children. Finally, in 2017, police announced that they had found the murder weapon after someone began talking about their involvement in planning Lorenzen's death. Investigators started monitoring SHERRA's correspondence and found incriminating information, leading to her arrest later that year for murder. She pled guilty for her role in the crime and received a 30-year sentence. But by then, SHERRA had already served over 500 days in jail and faced as little as 7 more years. She could see freedom as early as 2026. And instead of harboring bitterness towards SHERRA, Lorenzen's mother thanked her for giving her 6 grandchildren and expressed her intention to focus solely on them. Number 1. Brandee Curry. In May 2017, a 29-year-old Lincoln, Nebraska woman named Brandee Curry and a wealthy 50-year-old man connected through a sugar dating website. Shortly after the pair began dating, the man sold some land that he inherited from his father for $355,000. Curry started hitting him up regularly for cash, using wildly spun tales to persuade him into ponying up. First, she told him that she needed $30,000 to repay some of her recently deceased father's gambling debts after receiving a threat from his bookie, who allegedly threatened to force Curry to work if she didn't come up with the cash. Then she said she needed $14,000 for medical care for her child, who might have cancer, and she later requested $25,000 to buy her friend's photography business with. Investigators determined that Curry's stories were bogus. Her father was still alive and well, and had no gambling debts, and there was no evidence of Curry starting a business. Over a 4-month period, the deceived boyfriend had given her over $97,000 for things detectives could not verify that she actually used any of the money for. Curry was charged with theft by deception of over $5,000, a felony which carried a prison sentence of up to 20 years. And while details about where the case went are scarce, it appears as though she was arrested earlier this year for possession of drug paraphernalia. It probably seemed easy to get away with and perhaps almost non-criminal to dupe her boyfriend into giving her money. But Curry's ill-gotten funds landed her in hot water, serving as a reminder that using someone for material gain can come with some surprisingly harsh consequences. Thanks for watching. What do you think of these gold diggers gone wrong? Do you want to hear some more? Let me know in the comments below, and then don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.